Endurance Junkie podcast, episode 114. Hey junkies, how are you doing? My name is Peter and thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Now every listen means so much to me, so if you end up liking today's interview and think someone else would too, feel free to share it on your own social media channels. That would be awesome and very much appreciated. Now, if you have suggestions for possible future guests, you can always shoot me an email to peter@junkiepodcast.com and I'll try to make that happen. Also, feel free to join me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter if you want to discuss or leave your comments. My handle is Junkie Podcast on all platforms, so it should be nice and easy for us to connect. Alright, on today's show we have Laura Siddall, and Laura is a British professional triathlete who trains and competes all around the world. After a successful age group career with multiple world championship titles over the sprint and Olympic distance, Laura turned pro in 2014 and stepped up to the 70.3 and Ironman racing. She won her first full distance Ironman race in Australia in May 2017 and recently claimed a second title, this time in New Zealand. So hi Laura, thanks for coming on the show. Now for those of us who don't know you, can you maybe start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your sporting background growing up in the UK and how you got into triathlon?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on. So I'm a pro triathlete, British by background, but now kind of spend most of my time split between New Zealand and Europe. So I just tend to chase summer, which is quite a good lifestyle to have, I guess. I compete over the half and the full iron distance triathlons. Sporting background, always played sport from a kid through school and university, mainly kind of athletics, so track athletics, 400s, 800 meters, that sort of thing, and then also played a lot of netball, which is a pretty big sport over in England and in the Commonwealth countries. But it was only when I moved to Australia in 2007, I think it was, with my current corporate job at the time, that I discovered the sport of triathlon. So quite late in life for me, really. And it was just through friends from work. They were doing a charity bike ride and just suggested I should come along and join them. So I think I bought a bike sort of like the week before, and it was a hybrid mountain road bike with sort of a flat handlebars across the front and just normal pedals, so no cleats or clip-ins or anything like that. And I think, I don't even know what kit I had. I think I probably was just in, usual baggy shorts and t-shirts and nothing too technical at all. Mm-hmm. But it was good fun. And just off the back of that ride, my friends, they knew I was into sport and sporty, and they just said, I should give triathlon a go. And it's a sport that's so huge in Australia that everyone knows about it, where you just wouldn't have that same popularity or acknowledgement in the UK at that time. I mean, now it's a lot bigger in the UK as well. So I went online and did the good old Google and found a beginners group in Sydney, which is where I was living at the time, a group called Bondi Fit. So they were running a sort of a 6-8 week beginners course, so signed up for that, and never looked back, I guess they say. Yeah,
not a bad place to do your first races at Bondi Beach.
Oh yeah, I mean, fantastic. It's the lifestyle in Australia is so active and outdoors, and it makes it so easy for training, and if you've got a good group as well, which we had, it was always good fun. So yeah, being able to train swim training sessions down in the ocean at Bondi and running along the coast and stuff. Yeah, it was a pretty good way to get introduced to the sport. Yeah,
but you're always able to combine your job in engineering with being active on the side.
Yeah, so I started obviously as a complete rookie, they call it, a complete beginner. Didn't really know much about swim, bike and running and triathlon at all, and very much it was a hobby. I had my corporate career. I was an engineer working for Shell when I initially moved to Australia, and then sort of changed a couple of roles or a couple of different jobs over the years staying there. I guess I'm kind of somebody who pretty much sort of throws myself into the sport and wants to really improve and stuff if I get that passion for it. And so I was combining it, probably not if I look back now with hindsight, it probably wasn't the most sensible thing to do. And I would probably manage it a little bit differently now, knowing what I know now about elite performance and things. But I'd get up early in the morning and train before work with the group. I'd go to work, and then I'd train again in the evenings after work, and then probably do some more work when I got home after training. And so I was probably surviving on 4 to 5 hours sleep a night, which at the time when you're in that sort of cycle, you think it's totally doable and you think it's achievable, but you are surviving and you are perhaps performing in work and in sport, but you're only performing at a certain level, and you're not really getting the most out of your body in either one of those disciplines.
So that first race that you did must have gone pretty well then, that you were you immediately fell in love with the sport and went all in?
Oh gosh, I mean, I can't even remember the result. I think I might have made top 10 in my age group, but I think there was probably only about 11 of us in the age group. It was this very small local sprint race. It was just good fun. We did the beginners course, and there was a group of us doing that, and then the first race sort of was timed with the end of that course, which was really good fun, I guess, as a sort of graduation ceremony, so to speak, you could call it. I did my first race on that same bike, so just with my trainers, no cleats, things like that. I mean, I really can't remember much about the race itself. I think I do remember thinking I need to get a proper bike. I'm not going to do it again on this hybrid sort of mountain road bike. But yeah, I just loved it. I loved the community that was involved, and I guess when you are new to a sport and you can see there's so much opportunity to improve and get better, that kind of hooks you in and motivates you to keep going as well.
Yeah, I remember my first race. I think during that, it was also a sprint, and I think I've asked myself a couple of times, like, what the hell am I doing here? And then across that finish line, and the first thing that goes through your mind is, all right, when's the next one?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So can you talk a bit about your progression in the sport? Like, when did you realize that, with a bit of work, you could even make it to the highest level?
Yeah, probably last year. No, it's an interesting. I mean, I started, like I said, as a complete beginner, and just the hobby, I guess, grew and grew, and I could see I was getting better, or I wanted to get better. Having done sport and the athletics and netball to a relatively high level when I was younger in the UK, I could see that I could develop and get better in the triathlon as well. And I, so new to the sport and so new to swimming and cycling, I had so much to learn, and that gap to improvement was huge, and that kind of kept me going. But when I don't know, a lot of sports in the UK to me still was, we're brought up, it was still a hobby. It was still what you did outside of your career and your corporate career, and never really seen to be done professionally, or that you could make a living or career out of it. I guess being in Australia is a little bit different there, sporting mentality and things. And I as I was progressing through the sport and getting better, and I did manage to win sort of 4 world titles as an age grouper, but albeit over the sprint and Olympic distance, and then one over the 70.3. And a lot of people were saying in sort of those latter years, oh, you could turn professional, you could do this as a pro. But for me, I felt I was still so new to the sport. I'd still got so much to learn, and also probably this still stigma attached that it wasn't something you did as a career. It was just a hobby. There was also an element of the fact that at that time in the sport, I was doing the sprint and Olympic distance triathlons. And to be a professional in those distances, you really needed to be 18, 19, 20, coming into the sport in the national academies, going on to the ITU, draft legal circuits with those aims and aspirations of, Olympics, Commonwealth Games and that sort of thing. I was a lot older than that, coming into the sport at the age of 29. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't have the swim that was going to ever give me a chance to race over those distances, because that was my weaker of the three disciplines at the time. So I was going to have to step up to the longer distances. And at the time when people were saying, oh, you could turn professional and everything, I'd only done like one half distance race. So again, it was sort of completely new. But I guess it was when in 2013, at the end of 2013, I did sort of move up, and I did a 70.3 in Honu in Hawaii, which I won in my age group and as overall sort of female amateur, and that qualified me to the world champs, which I went to, and again won my age group, was fastest overall amateur, which was fantastic. Went a week later to London for the Olympic distance worlds as an age grouper, which is again and won that, which is a fantastic experience. But it was probably that race in Vegas at the world champs that sort of made me realize that there was a possibility I could do this at the longer distance. But probably if I look back on, I'm now in what I think my fourth year as a professional, and it's probably only been in the last 12 to 18 months that you actually start to realize and believe that you can compete at that level. I think, the first 2 years as a professional, it's hard to believe whether you are good enough and you can make that jump.
Yeah. Okay. So what made you decide in the end to give up your career in engineering and go for the pro life, the pro athlete life? Because I think, in your engineering job, you had a pretty good pay. That was pretty steady.
Yeah.
So you're taking a bit of a gamble, right?
Oh yeah, complete leap of faith or leap in the dark as to what I was doing, and probably actually didn't think about it or do an analysis too much on the pros and cons of being a professional athlete. Because if I had, I'd have probably talked myself out of it with those financial differences between the two. I think I just got to a stage, I was sitting in a corporate career. I wasn't particularly enjoying the job that I had. And I think more and more of my headspace was taken up with the training and the triathlon and the sport and the lifestyle I'd got through doing that and through finding the sport. And I got to a place of just saying it's going to be now or never, because I was a bit older, and sport only has a limited time span through age, although quite a few people are disproving that lately, which is good. But it was a case of if I don't try now to see what I can do, then you're probably going to miss the boat, and you probably will be sat here in 5, 10, 20 years time thinking, what if I'd done that? So yeah, I didn't want to look back in that 5, 10, 20 years time and say, what if I'd done that? I wanted to just, give myself a chance. I'd probably shied away from fully committing to sport at a younger age, because like I said, it wasn't sort of the traditional thing to do. And so I think probably the environment of being in Australia, where it's a little bit more at that time accepting and supporting to do that, albeit still not really the norm. It was just that sort of, I want to take that leap and just see what happens.
Yeah. I haven't regretted it since?
Oh, no, not at all. Gosh, no regrets at all. I definitely don't miss the corporate life. Yes, I miss the salary and the regular salary coming in every month and that security, I guess. But and I do miss the engagement you have with people, your work colleagues or your friends through a work environment. But gosh, I have absolutely no regrets on the decision I made and what I've done over the last few years. I know I'm incredibly lucky and fortunate to be able to do what I do. And it's sport and triathlon has given me so many amazing opportunities and experiences that I definitely don't have any regrets. The only thing I often say is a regret is that I wish I'd have found the sport 5 or 10 years earlier and then been sort of had the opportunities to have been doing this for a lot longer and develop through the sport that way.
Yeah, okay. Have you noticed any major improvements in your performances quickly after turning pro and being able to train full time?
No, I mean, I think the first couple of years as a pro were actually really hard and you don't see the improvements. And so that's actually really difficult because you start questioning, have you made the right decision? Why did you make the decision? What do other people think? Because you went from winning as an age grouper in your age group to then not really achieving anything of significance in the pro ranks, and everyone was expecting you to win because all your friends saw you winning as an age group, and you start questioning and there's a lot of questions and just wondering if you did make the right decision and you really can step up and make it. I think the improvements have come in the last 12 to 18 months. So just through being patient, trusting your coach and the training and the process, trying not to think too much about results and trying just to be process orientated and seeing the small improvements and the small developments that you make in everyday training in the different disciplines, in the swim, the bike and the run, and just keeping that faith and trust that eventually those results will start to come out whenever that happens. And it's hard because it probably took a good 2 years or even longer than that for me to start seeing that results and that the decision was kind of the right one.
Are you able to now as a full-time athlete, are you able to focus on other aspects of your training besides swim, bike, run that can help you improve things that you hadn't at a time when you were still in corporate?
Yeah, I think the thing about being a professional triathlete, it's not that you have more time to train, because I was training a lot when I was an age grouper, but what you do get as a professional is you have the time to recover properly and rest properly and do all the other elements that add to that performance. So going to the gym and doing your strength and conditioning work 2 or 3 times a week and that sort of thing, and getting massage to help and being a bit more focused on nutrition and having the time to focus on that and fueling and things like that. And then, I also work with a sports psychologist and things like that, and having the time. So I think there's all of those areas that you have more time to access as a professional that help to contribute towards that performance.
Okay. You're coached by Matt Dixon, which is a fellow countryman of yours. He's based in the US. You were based in New Zealand and Europe. Why did you pick Matt as a coach? Yeah,
I was aware of Matt through the likes of social media and just from getting into the sport. He at the time was coaching another British athlete, Emma Kate Lidbury, who I'd been connected with through various opportunities, and so I'd been chatting to her a little bit, and she probably sort of made me aware of Matt. I did have a look at other coaches as well at the time when I was making that decision to turn professional. I knew that I needed to change my coaching setup from moving from an amateur to a pro, and that was probably going to mean moving in location as well, away from Sydney. So I'd looked at a few of the best coaches in the world. I guess you sort of put right down the list of all the top coaches. I'd also had some conversations with Darren Smith, who's an Australian triathlon coach. He was working with a lot of the ITU and Olympic athletes, and I'd had the opportunity to meet Darren on a training camp, and so I'd sort of sent him a note saying, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Does he have any advice and recommendations on who might be a good coach to look at? And as it turned out as well, Matt was sort of at the top of his list as well for me. So it kind of worked out pretty well. And it was then a case of, I just liked possibly the fact that he was British, but I like this sort of, he still had a squad environment with his athletes. He had a group of professionals that he coached. But I think his sort of methodology and his personality and his sort of character and coaching techniques just appealed to me. And so that was the sort of the reasons for going down that line.
Yeah. Did it involve, major differences in your training program?
Not huge differences, really. I mean, obviously there was a big difference. I moved to San Francisco, and big difference from suddenly having the sport as your hobby to the sport as your career and full time. And so like those elements of getting my head around the rest and the recovery aspects as well were pretty big. But I think those initial couple of years of training, there wasn't anything massively different, but it was more about Matt and I developing a coach-athlete relationship where we both understood what training sessions worked for me or didn't work for me, and so how best to develop from there. And also I'll mention as well Paul Buick, who's works with Matt. He's actually based here in Christchurch, New Zealand. He's a fantastic coach for cycling as well as swim and running, but his sort of speciality is on the bike. And I think just between the three of us, it was developing a plan and that worked for me. And like I said, what sessions worked for me and what sessions didn't. And that was more the difference from turning sort of amateur to pro and then working with Matt. Yeah.
Okay. And it definitely paid off. I mean, you won Ironman Australia last year. And then, recently Ironman New Zealand. Congrats with that.
Thank you.
What were your expectations going into that race?
No real expectations. Well, I say that. I mean, obviously, when you stand on the start line, you're wanting to win, or at least be on the podium. But you can't think about that result as you head into the race. I think it's more about an expectation that I want to execute and the race that I know I can and the performance that I know I can. And it's about transferring what you've done in training into the race. And then you sort of have different goals, I guess, or process related goals, which are probably more that you want to achieve during that race, and then hope that if you get all that right, it puts you in the right place at the end of the day.
No, okay. Can you quickly take us through a day?
Through the race. For once, it was a pretty calm day in New Zealand. Last year when we raced, we woke up to sort of pretty decent swell and surf on the lake and blowing a gale, which I personally was hoping for the same conditions this year. I like a bit more chop on the lake and a bit more wind, but it was super calm. So the swim, I mean, I didn't know it. I never really know at the time how the swim's going. I knew that once the cannon fired, 3 girls had gone off the front. I knew one would be Teresa Adams because she's a fantastic swimmer. I knew another was Jocelyn because I'd seen her go ahead as well, and had a good feeling the other one would be an Australian, Elise Selmark, but wasn't sure. But I found myself in a group of 4 and I thought we were probably that second group back. And we just swam, I think we swam pretty well together as a group, worked together, so kind of felt pretty comfortable in that. And came out the water, I think sort of we're 2 or 3 minutes down to Jocelyn, about 6 minutes down to Teresa at the front. And then I managed to get out of transition pretty quickly, but realised relatively soon on the bike that unfortunately the legs weren't there. Sort of I'd got a race plan of what I wanted to achieve on the bike, and sort of within the first 10, 15 kilometers had to do a pretty quick reassessment and of, okay, the body's not going to give me the legs that I wanted today. So how do we manage that, and what do we do instead? So a little bit of reassessment, a little bit of, right, what's plan B? How do we go from here? And also just, I guess, a little bit of keeping a little bit of positivity of saying, well, the legs might come back to me or might develop stronger over the course of the race. You know, just keep saying to myself, it's still a long day, still lots going to happen. The first sort of 45k, I made up a little bit of time on the women ahead, but not loads and not as much as I wanted. But then it's a 2-lap course, so after we'd turned around at sort of 45k mark and started coming back into town, I suddenly found I actually was closing the gap, and so caught the two women ahead at about the 90k mark, just as we started the second loop, and then was sort of able to ride pretty solid, not great but pretty solid for the rest of the bike course. I came into T2 in the lead, but Jocelyn was sort of, I don't know, 10 or 20 seconds behind me, and I think Teresa was maybe another minute or so behind us from that. Started the run knowing that Jocelyn is a fantastic runner. She's a sub 3 hour Caralaba marathon runner. But I guess found a bit of rhythm and form pretty quickly, and the legs didn't feel too bad for the run. And the splits I was getting was that I was sort of holding Jocelyn at the same distance, so at about that 20 seconds gap. But then I think probably around the 8, 9, 10k mark, I'm not sure whether I slowed or not. I need to go back and look in a bit more detail at the splits, but wasn't feeling too hot. But and Jocelyn suddenly sort of pulled up on my shoulder and overtook me, but didn't get too far ahead and sort of stayed very much within sight. And so as we started the second lap, because it's a three lap course, and again, just I got a bit of strength. I think I've started to settle down into my rhythm again, and she wasn't getting any further ahead from me, and suddenly it seemed like I was inching closer to her again, and so suddenly managed to sort of pull up on her shoulder at about that 17, 18k mark and re-overtook Jocelyn, and eyes forward, head down, and kept moving forward from there. I didn't dare look back at that point to see where she was. I assumed that she'd be coming with me and wouldn't want to let me go, but just kept moving forward. And I guess at the end of the second lap, you go back through town, and that was sort of the first chance I had to see where she was behind me, because you sort of do you've got the turnaround and cross paths with people coming the other direction, and so got the first actual sighting that I'd put about a 3-minute gap or maybe a bit more on her, which was a real confidence booster at that point. But then suddenly, sort of a split second later, saw that Teresa in third place was about to catch Jocelyn, and so the two of them were together. So that was a bit of a fright as well, which meant I still had to kind of keep pushing that last lap. And even though I thought Teresa was catching me, and people were saying that she was catching me and things like that, in fact, we were probably running about similar pace at that time. And so, managed to hold them both off. And as soon as you get onto that carpet and have that amazing special feeling of taking the win.
Yeah, and all the pain all of a sudden disappears.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, suddenly, all the emotions and that sort of thing sort of flood in and overtake all the pain that you'd been, and the mental anguish that you'd gone through for the last last lap or the last bit of the marathon.
Okay. Did you recover well in the meantime?
I think so. I mean, I I try and keep moving after the race, so I try and ride the next day and just keep the body moving. I mean, it was a bit difficult this time because there was quite a few commitments in a couple of days after the race. Some through the race organisers, but some obviously that I'd arranged myself, like going into some of the local schools and meeting some of the kids. So, which were fantastic, and I definitely wouldn't swap it for the world. But it was a little bit harder to keep a normal kind of training routine. And then I've just spent a couple of days back down in Wanaka in the South Island of New Zealand and just done loads of walking and hiking up the mountains, which has been fantastic. Time to get a bit of headspace and that sort of thing. You know, it's a long season ahead, so wanted to give myself a little bit of time to relish and savor the moment and the race, but also to and just to refresh before the long season ahead. So yeah, I only got back to Christchurch on Monday and sort of starting to ramp back into formal training, even though I've been active over the last week, but just a bit more formality. So I've not really tested the body yet. So we'll see what happens over the next few days. It feels okay at the moment, but yeah, we'll see when it gets put to the test in a few days' time.
Yeah. So what's next on the agenda then?
So yeah, what's next? So I'm here in New Zealand through to mid-May, and I'll head over to Australia. I'll race Challenge Melbourne, which is a half distance race. That's at the end of April, and then I'll head back to Port Macquarie to race Ironman Australia again, because that's a great race. And then after that, I will head over to Europe and race probably the Challenge series of races in Europe over the summer there.
Yeah, okay. And Kona on the agenda as well?
Yeah, yes and no, undecided. You know, it's difficult to qualify for Kona, rightly so. You know, it's the World Championship, so we need to collect points, and I probably need, even though I won New Zealand, which if it was next year in 2019, it would have given me an automatic qualification for Kona, but this year we're still on the point system, so I'll probably need a few more points from Ironman Australia if that goes well. You know, I raced in Kona last year and I didn't have the race I wanted. I took a lot of learning away from that. It's kind of left me undecided. Part of me wants to go back just to try and get the performance out of myself that I know I can at that race. But the other half of me, I don't want to change. There are so many great races in the world that we can do throughout the year. I don't want to necessarily change my plans over the summer in Europe to have to chase points just to qualify. So, you know, if I get the points through the races I've done, so through Ironman New Zealand and fingers crossed through Ironman Australia, then and that qualifies me for Kona, then yes, I'll probably go back and race. If I don't get the points, I'll leave it kind of to fate and leave it to the roll down perhaps, or just just enjoy the races I've got and the season I've got planned in Europe regardless.
Okay. Do you have a bucket list of races that you want to do?
I'm pretty good on bucket lists in terms of, I've done some of the pretty cool races. I've raced, I think Challenge Wanaka should be on everyone's bucket list. It's in the South Island of New Zealand, and it's just one of the most, it is the most beautiful races I've ever done. It's tough, it's challenging, but it's just stunning. And I've done that, 4 times now, so I think I'm pretty lucky that I've had that. I think the other bucket race is Challenge Roth. I'll go back there and race this year, and I've raced the last 2 years, so I think that's pretty good. I'm trying to think of other. When I was younger, I used to say I wanted to race, do the London Marathon. Mm-hmm. So not a triathlon race, but always wanted to run the London Marathon. And I used to also say I wanted to race the Marathon des Sables, so the marathon across the Sahara Desert. Not so sure about that one anymore. But then I think I probably would like to, before I finish the sport, race a few more races in the UK and go back home and race. I've only raced in the UK once at the ITU World Champs as an age grouper in London in 2013, which was just a fantastic experience. And I think it would be quite good to go back and race one of the longer races in the UK at some point.
focus on 2018 first. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for your results there, and wish you all the best for the season coming up there. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Yep. So you can follow me on our Facebook page. I've got a athlete page, so it's just, I think, Laura Siddall, professional triathlete. Instagram at LMSid, Twitter at LMSiddall. Website, I think, is just laurasiddall.com. So a few ways there to that people can interact and follow me and send me a message and say hi. Also, I always say, at races or wherever you are, if people see me, please come up and say hello and introduce themselves. And I always love meeting other people and hearing their stories and what they've been up to. So yeah, cool. I'll put those links up on the show notes page. Feel free to give some love to your sponsors and partners. Probably should just say Matt Dixon and Paul Buick and Purple Patch for supporting me, and then supported by some fantastic companies. Scody, it's an Australian company. They make all my awesome race kit, which I love, and I ride a CPO time trial bike, which is fantastic. Shots Nutrition have supported me right from beginning and being an age grouper, so a lot of time for them. They make great gels and hydration drinks. Cask helmets have come on board this year, and Hoka One, which is good. And then the other two I have a great relationship with Vredestein Tires and also Sock Mine, who are a local company from the UK and are based just around the corner from where I live. So it's pretty cool to support a local company from back home.
Yeah, cool. Put those links up as well. One final question to finish it off here today. If you could sit on a bench in a nice park there in Christchurch and chat for an hour with anyone from the past or the present, who would it be and why?
I've been dreading this question because I saw it when you sent it over, and I listened to some of your other podcasts and sort of heard this question at the end. I was like, damn, that's a good one. And there's so many people. I was trying to think about it. I think I'm going to give a few. One is a guy called Matthew Syed, who's a ex-athlete, but a table tennis. He's British, but a table tennis athlete, but now a journalist and writes a lot of books, but also he mainly sort of talks about sport and business and peak performance and continuous improvement. And that's just an area that interests me. And I just think he's got a fascinating perspective on life, and I'd love to sit and rack his brains. But the other one I thought about was actually my grandparents, and that's what they're all four of them unfortunately died many years ago now. And I think that's probably, as you get older, you appreciate them more. And I appreciated them at the time and spent loads of great hours together. Don't get me wrong, but I think now it would be awesome to kind of sit down with them again and ask them more about their lives and what they did when they were growing up and all those kind of conversations. I think it would just be cool to have that time again. I can relate to that. I mean, especially people from our generation. I mean, I think the things our grandparents had to live through, world wars and stuff like that. The stories that they had most of the time is pretty amazing, and stuff that we can't even get our head around. So that definitely be interesting talks. Yeah. And my only other one, I like to think of this question. It's more like that dinner party question. Who do you invite to your dinner party?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You gave me a tough one with just having one person on a bench. The other person I think is fascinating is Dame Judi Dench, who's a British actress, icon, legend. I'm pretty sure she's royalty in the UK. But I just think, again, from the Bond films, right? Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it's been in so many films. But again, I think maybe because I'm not even sure how old she is. I think she's in her 80s now. So again, it's that generation thing, but just the life that she's led and being a female as well, I think, and what she's achieved, I think would be be fantastic to talk to.
Yeah, cool stuff. All right, thanks for your time, Laura. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Junkies, you've reached the end of yet another episode of the Endurance Junkie podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Laura Siddall for coming on. Now, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future episodes, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and simply subscribe to the show if you want to automatically receive every latest episode directly on your computer or your mobile device. The show is also on Spotify, so if that's your preferred medium, just search for Endurance Junkie Podcast in the search bar and you will find us no problem. Alright, thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time. Cheers.